police shot and significantly injured an 11-year-old boy who had called 911 for help. Yeah, that child's been identified as Aderrien Murry. Here's a picture of him. His mother had shared the photo. Her name is Indianola Murry. And unfortunately, not many details have been released about the child besides the fact that he is an 11-year-old boy. But we do know that here's what happened, and this is per the attorney representing his family. Aderrien Murry, who called police at the request of his mother, was unarmed and following instructions from Indianola Officer Greg Capers. Then Capers shot him in the chest early last Saturday morning, seriously wounding him. The boy had called police to the home after his mother, Indianola Murry, was threatened by a man at 4 a.m. local time. But Capers escalated the situation. The man was believed to be a former partner of Miss Murry, various media reports suggested. Now more about the 911 call. Indianola Murry told NBC that the man had arrived at her house irate and she was worried about her safety. Then when the police officer arrived, he already had his gun drawn when he was at the front door, she further recounted. Carlos Moore, that is the attorney representing them, said 2 officers responded and one kicked the front door before the mother opened it. She told them the intruder had left the home, but 3 children were inside, Moore said, adding that Indianola Murry told him Capers yelled that anyone inside should come out with their hands up. He said that Adrienne walked into the living room with nothing in his hands, and Capers, who is black, shot him in the chest. I would definitely say that this is incredibly, incredibly disheartening. So as many of you may know, I got a master's in criminal justice. I had trained and worked to be in law enforcement. I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. I also do a lot of reading and a lot of research and whatnot. I understand that domestic violence calls are the most dangerous for police. And so I could see why these individuals were on high alert at the same time. The moment you've been notified that there is a child in the home, the fact that it was the child who called and spoke to the 911 operator, which means the operator would have conveyed that. So the officers knew good and well that there was a child in the home. That tells us that the officers should have proceeded in a way that would have protected the safety of all individuals around. And instead they saw an 11-year-old boy and they decided to shoot them. And also the fact that the officer is black, it doesn't change any kind of equation. We know white supremacy is embedded in the system of all of us, including myself. And that is a problem. But it's also something we can't just dismiss because the actor in this case is black. The fact is that white supremacy kills across the board, as does aspects of violence and the patriarchy and hurting us all. So this is just a failure all around, but I can damn sure tell you the officer's response was completely and totally unwarranted here, no matter how much he would have necessarily feared for his safety given statistical reports in terms of domestic violence. Mondale.
I mean, listen, the people who told on Harriet Tubman were black. The people who told on Nat Turner were black. So the idea that they need to put that this is a black police officer does not change that the act of policing in this country is racist. And we can't say anything else about that institution except for that. The fact that this lady went to the door and said, there are 3 kids in the house, the intruder has left. And you still, why are you kicking in the door when she's already told you this? Why are you telling people they need to come out with their hands up? I understand the dangers that around domestic violence, but she just told you that her 3 kids are in that house. Where is your, where are you at calming down? You still see danger in blackness, regardless of your skin color, because that blue uniform and that badge has told you to. And that is the problem that exists. That is the implicit bias that is inside, like you said, all of us. Black is dangerous.
Yep, and that's something that we are receiving every day in messages. And while it has gotten so much better from what it was in the past, it is still not okay. And we're seeing it play out on the stage when you can't have an 11-year-old black child call for help without getting shot. And the thing is when we talk about the adultification of black children, this is also what we're seeing here, in addition to having a trigger happy officer. I can't understand why they kicked the door open or why they pushed back, because the fact is that there could have been a hostage situation. She could have said what she needed to. I get that to a certain extent, but at the same time, you knew there was a child there, not because of the words that passed her lips, but because it was a child who called for help. So there is no excuse. And we know that Adrienne now is making a recovery, which is good because it's a child, 11 years old, hit in the chest with a bullet. His injuries were severe. and his road to recovery will be long and taxing. Now here is Aderrien Murry with the family attorney, Carlos Moore. This is a photo here, and this is after the shooting. Murry was thankfully released from the hospital after 5 days. And now we know that the officer who had opened fire wasn't identified by his department, but we know that Officer Greg Capers has been placed on paid administrative leave after a unanimous council vote. Also, there are calls for growing for change for these officers, particularly that Capers be fired and charged. And here's what the family's lawyer, Carlos Moore, said about the ongoing fight for justice.
We're hoping that the city of Indianola immediately terminates Officer Greg Capers. There's no justification for shooting this unarmed 11-year-old black young child in the chest. So we want Capers gone. Suspension with pay is a vacation with pay after doing something so egregious. And so we want the chief of police also, Ronald Sampson, immediately terminated. We also want to get the body camera footage, and we want prosecution for aggravated assault.
I definitely know that something needs to happen here. At the same time, firing Moore is just not, or excuse me, firing Capers is not necessarily going to make meaningful change, because this is institutional. This is ingrained in our society. How individuals are viewed, we're going to have change on a larger level. But I definitely think that firing Capers, it ain't a bad idea, and I think it is a place to start. But trying to act as though this is just one bad apple, it's not it. Mondale.
I mean, you're spot on, right? You're spot on. This idea that an individual, we don't have an individual problem, and we see so many people that are against the fight for different policing or better policing of black people. We see so many of us making this argument against people who support the blue or back the blue when they say, this is an individual problem. It is not. We're talking about an institutional change that has to happen. We need to rethink not just what we expect of police officers, but who should be police officers. And what level of training should be, that needs to be mandatory. And I don't think this country is prepared to have that hard conversation. Because if they were, it will probably be a completely revamped ideal of what policing looks like.
Absolutely, and we know that policing started out as slave patrols, and they're still operating that way regardless of what melanin count the slave catchers have.